Hey, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. My name is Jared Messer. I am so glad to have you here with us. I am sitting here with my very good friend and co-host, my Ohio compatriot, Clint Bicknell. Clint has been a worship leader, a songwriter, music director in churches different all over the country. I've been on a similar path. I've been a worship leader, songwriter, and spent time in Nashville and Wisconsin. And I started the Worship Music Academy, which some of you are familiar with. So this podcast is like a full circle moment for us. We can come together and talk about things that are really important to us. And once upon a time, Clint and I played in a couple of bands together, and we wrote a bunch of songs. We may share some of those at some point. This podcast is designed to be an encouragement for you, maybe a challenge in some ways. We're going to talk about the real life side of worship, music, leading a band, playing in a band, running a worship team, and then maybe some bigger philosophy things like the current state of worship music, things that we think are the church is struggling with, maybe things that we think the church is doing well. We're going to cover all that stuff, and it's really designed to be us sitting around doing what we do, talking about worship music. So we are really excited to have you with us here. We do want to stress that these are things that we believe, and we wholeheartedly believe that we should love each other and be humble and bring what we know and what God has shown us. And we're open to your comments and suggestions. So please leave those. We would love to hear what you guys want to talk about and what you think. And man, that's a lot of talking. Okay, we
It's
are
what you're
really
good
glad
at.
that you're here. What's that?
It's what you're good at.
Talking. All right. We are really glad that you're here. Thanks for spending some time with us. Clint was just telling me before we started that he had a circumstance come up recently. I think that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about
Yeah.
being a part of a team when you come in with certain skill sets, where you fit in, how hard you should push for the music to be important, and where that fits in with what's best for the church on that Sunday or even your worship leader. So, Clint, before we start, tell us a little bit about where you've served, maybe, and a little bit about your background, and you can fill in
Yeah.
the gaps
So
that I didn't cover.
I think you got most of it. I've spent most of my career at a single church. We started a church plant. I was involved in a church plant about 30 years ago and served um, various, you know, how it is. You kind of
Yeah,
serve in a lot of different areas, but primarily as the creative arts director and worship director, um, along with my brother, who was also an associate pastor, and
we wrote
just
some
kind
song
of
with Jason too.
wrote some songs. We'll get
Yeah,
Jason on here
yeah.
to get
Sorry
his
about
opinion on some things.
nip it.
No, but
Yeah,
um, so I spent most our time there, most of my time there, leading worship, building a team from nothing, building an environment from nothing. You know, across the board. Did that for about 25 years, and that season was over. It kind of put me back into the local scene, so I've been starting to play around, getting back out there to seeing what other teams are doing these days, and just trying to encourage them where I can, help them where I can, fill in. We, as of now, haven't settled on a home church. We're still kind of filling things out and
yeah,
trying to figure that out.
yeah.
But it's important to have a home church and it's important to serve, but I think it's also important that if you can find people who need encouragement and need just that uplifting, because Sunday's coming, and you know how it is as a leader.
Yeah,
Sunday's coming, and you get wore down, you get beat down,
for
and
sure.
you get lost in the details sometimes, and it can become the chore. So that's kind of where I'm at. I've been starting to play around with some different places and just to get to know people again and see where I can help encourage, whether it's a leader or a guitar player who's maybe not
Or
seasoned,
or
but
a
he
bass
wants to be.
player, or a
Or
mandolin player, or a keyboard player, or a drummer,
yeah,
or
yeah.
or whatever else you play.
But what we were talking about before,
Yeah, go into that.
I had an interesting thing come up just literally an hour ago. I was I'm scheduled to play at a church this weekend, and the worship leader incredible leader. She asked me to sit in and play the guitar this week. I was like, great, that's awesome. So little texting back and forth, and she got me, this set and playing center, and I'm going through it and practicing stuff. And I just happened to notice over in the left hand column that there was no bass player listed. And I'm like, so I reached out to her. I'm like, hey, do you not have a bass player this week? Because if you need me on bass, I'm happy to play bass. I don't have to do guitar. She said, well, she said she said the guy uh, canceled. He was going to cover the bass line in with the Nord. She's a phenomenal keyboard player. So she was going to play the bass in one hand and everything else in the right hand. And like, well, in so many words, not because you don't want to offend anybody, you don't want to
For
try
sure.
to
Right.
overstep boundaries. But
Yeah.
hey, I'm happy to play bass, and I kind of think personally, in my opinion, I think it's better to have a live bass player and do without the guitar stuff if you have to. And she's like, well, there's this song, Egypt, there's this big guitar hook build going into the bridge, and you could tell she's a little concerned that it just
Yeah.
wasn't going to be what it was supposed to be. And I'm like, well, between the bass and the Nord, we can cover that. We can mimic that lead hook. We can come up with something, and it won't sound like an electric guitar, but it'll be good and it'll be big and it'll be energetic.
Yeah, it'll build. Yeah.
And I think we can get to where you want to be. But all that being said, um, I think more importantly than any of that is I don't want you to be uncomfortable on Sunday morning with feeling the angst of it's not what you envisioned. The song
Yeah.
didn't come together, um, and I would rather see that's double sided because she could get nervous because she has to now do double duty if she's playing the bass line. That could make her uncomfortable, or she could be uncomfortable feeling like the song's just not going where she wants it to go. So I said, for me, my job is to make sure you're comfortable and you can lead the way you want to lead. So it's up to you. I'll do whatever. I don't care. Um, I guess she thought about it a little bit. She come back and she eventually said, "Hey, uh, I'll just trust you in this, and we'll see how it goes." So we'll rehearse tomorrow night. It could be great. It could be terrible. And I told her, I said, if it's bad on rehearsal night, I'll bring
Bring
my
your
guitar
guitar.
Sunday,
Yeah.
and I'll play Sunday on
Sure.
the guitar. So
Sure.
we'll see how it goes. But that becomes a question of, okay, what do you? And I'm sure there's gobs of opinions. Do you make it as much like the track as possible, or do you make it your own with the talent that you have
Yeah.
and the pool of people that you have and the level of talent that you have? That can all play into how you can produce something. Um, so I'm curious on your opinion. I'm curious if people are watching. I'd love to see comments and how you handle how different people approach this kind of a situation.
Yeah. That's a incredibly if you're watching, I'm sure if you're a worship leader, you've never had anyone cancel on you
I'm
before
sure.
practice.
I'm sure. Yeah,
It's
the night
very
before practice.
or even more common in some churches, they just don't have anybody. They don't have a bass player. And the reality for keyboard players, I mean, I understand, but a lot of keyboard players, they're imagining the bass as you play the bottom note.
Right.
But a bass player brings so much more than the bottom note.
Right.
They bring an entire melodic line if
Hmm.
they're able to. They can alternate things to make it much more interesting in the bottom. So when keyboard players play bass, they usually play just the bottom note.
Right. Just the
But
root
but
notes.
you as a bass player can create an entire different mood, feeling by playing the bass. So this kinda speaks to a bigger issue because as we're playing music as part of the worship service, what we really wanna carry with us is humility, and that's what you're demonstrating. Understanding your role and then realizing that your role is to facilitate the church to be able to engage. And if the worship leader who's standing up there is distracted, thinking about other
Right.
things,
Right.
it's going to be difficult to draw the church in. So we take one step back, and the way you handled it is perfect. That you offer what you can, and then ultimately the leader has to choose, right? And I did that one time. I was like, we have a lot of opinions here, but I'm the one who picks, so I'm
Yeah.
picking that one.
And
And
really, on top of all that, as a player, um, every player has their role, and they're going to have limited time and limited resources to give in support of the worship leader. But I think a lot of people just miss that, if you're on a worship team, your number one priority is to support that leader. We as a band
that
need to be
raises an
able.
interesting point. I'm glad you said that. Go ahead, keep going.
So, well, we as a band, our number one role, I always approached it like this. When my brother was our leader, and I always considered my really primary goal above making it good, practice, be rehearsed, do it with excellence, is to put him in a place where he absolutely does not have to think about anything but leading. He's not worried about, oh, is the band going to hit that push on this section of the chorus? Are they gonna miss the extra
I
bridge?
give it
Are they going?
50-50.
A lot of leaders do,
Hey,
unfortunately.
if there's a page turn, the top of the second page, it's a roll of the dice. They maybe
Yeah, it
get it, they
is.
don't.
That's right. But if we can, in that, if you start there, that feeds into everything else you do. If you start with that mindset, you're gonna come to rehearsal practiced. You're gonna know this stuff. You're gonna be on time. You're not gonna be 25 minutes late on Sunday morning because your leader's going, well, right, 50 again, 50
Right.
50. We've all had those oversleepers, right?
Yeah.
You get the text an hour later, sorry, I overslept. So I just think if I could do one thing to encourage the team, start looking at it from that approach. You would be amazed at how you'll start to find little things that you can do to support that leader, because 99% of the time that leader is also the one that's doing everything. I was fortunate enough over a period of time that was able to train people. One of them was my wife, to the point of I didn't have to worry about getting charts in. I didn't have to worry about picking the songs. I was able to build trust in people, team members, to say, you guys playing this week. I'll review it, I'll approve it, but you guys playing, you get the charts in, you get the MP3s, whatever it is that they need, and then let the leaders just relax and focus on the spirit of the morning, what God's telling you to do. Because leaders, they're doing their job. They're praying over Sunday morning, right? They're praying over, God, what do you want to, you're going to move this week. What do you need me to do to help that?
Yep. You raise an interesting point, and you're going to get some pushback. I'll tell you why, because I have an answer, and I agree with you, but isn't your job in the worship band to worship? That's, and I
I got an
say,
opinion, but I'll
yeah,
let
so
you.
do
I'll
I.
let you speak.
So do I. As the worship leader, I used to say that I don't have the luxury to lose myself,
Hmm.
because if you close your eyes and I give myself completely over,
Hmm.
I'm actually not leading. I'm hoping that
Right.
they follow. It's an odd thing, and we'll get some resistance on this, and that's totally fine because we can disagree and
Right.
love. But I believe that the worship leader's primary job is horizontal,
Yeah.
primarily. My job is to pull all of the congregation in so that they can. So I'm a reflection. I'm not a model. I reflect. So they look at me, and I'm pushing them up, but they're looking at me. So I have to pull them in horizontally so that they can then work. And if I'm too busy off here, I'm going to lose people. I have to be able to pay attention, see that if people are dialed in. And so what you're saying, and I agree, that the band's job then is one step removed. We can't lose ourselves either in the band. We have to facilitate for the leader so that the person leading the music can then not feel the pressure of fixing everything. And then they can focus on the congregation. And then what happens is this thing happens where it just once you do that, you get into a groove where you actually can. I
Yeah.
can engage, I can, be more vertical once everybody's in, then we kinda go the same place, but you're right. I don't think it's the band's job to lose themselves. I think their job is to stay dialed in and play with excellence so that the framework is there for the church
Right.
to engage. And there listen, people are gonna push back on this, I can tell you. And that's not to
So
say
they're
you
right.
don't get up there, you're not just for yourself. It's the exact opposite. I actually would argue if you're worshiping on your own, that's for yourself. What's much more difficult is to stay focused so that the church can it's very unselfish to give yourself so the church can and that's kinda what you're saying, that our job as band members is to help the leader free them up, do
Right.
whatever has to happen so that they can be focused on leading. And
Exactly.
I think that's spot on.
I agree 100%, and I agree 100% we'll probably get pushback on
Yeah,
that.
yeah, and that's okay.
But that's okay. Everybody's got an opinion.
Sure.
But I'll say this, it brings up another side to that.
Yeah.
I guess my belief is number one, and this is a way bigger topic, and we'll have to talk about this another time. Number one, first of all, you have to define what worship is and when it should exist. It's not Sunday morning worship. Worship is a lifestyle. It's lived out every day,
For
right?
sure.
What we do on Sunday morning with worship is great, but unfortunately, because we are the ones leading, just like you said, we have to step back, and it sounds terrible to say this, but we have to step back and we have to choose the job over allowing ourselves to get too far in that mode, because you can get lost in that mode. If you get lost in that mode and you do something distracting, then your entire audience just lost the moment.
Yeah.
Um, and and I think the bigger issue here, and this is something we were able to develop when we were leading, and I think unfortunately most leaders today haven't done this and they don't have this. But the worship leader, they have a job and we all know what their job. The worship leader has to develop a music director that they trust. And when I say music director, I don't mean the MD, the guy that's just calling out in the mic in the ears, and they're I mean, that's all
Chorus.
great. Exactly. That's all great.
Verse. Right.
It's all
Bridge.
great and it's helpful, but that's not what a music director is. A music director is the guy that the worship leader empowers with authority to say, you're responsible for everything musically related. I'm going to show up and sing.
Mhm.
I'm going to focus on what I need to do as a leader on Sunday. I'm going to come in and rehearse my part. I'm going to give 100%. But you're responsible to making sure that the band hits the arrangement and that they know what they're doing. And even if there's creativity that can be involved, to make that stuff your own. To me, that's what's really missing in most of today's teams, and it's why most leaders are just so daggone wore out, and that's how they get burnout, because they're focused again in the weeds instead of ordaining somebody as their go-to guy, um, to just do all the work, delegate all that out, focus on what you as a leader needs to focus on, and trust that it's going to get done. And the music director, if you do that, that opens up the worship leader to go further. They can get a little more lost in the moment
That's right.
because they
If it's set
trust,
right.
if it's set right, and they trust their band director, they can go there. And, excuse me, and it'll be okay, because the worship director or the music director knows you learn to read those people, right? When I was leading with my brother, I could follow him anywhere because I knew we were familiar enough. I knew just by the inflection of his voice where he was
Coming around
going.
again. Yeah.
It's like a bass player listening to a drummer, right? You can tell where they're going. You
Right.
can ebb and flow with it. And the music director, that's when he comes into play. And I think all these live videos of the big worship teams, I kind of think they're doing a bit of a disservice to the local worship church because you see that guy doing that function, and they released the little videos, the in-ear mix,
Yeah.
and all that
Right.
stuff, and it's the director talking them through. Those guys are doing that because they've already done the band building behind the scene, and
Sure.
the guy's just talking them through it, and most of them's doing it live.
Yeah.
So that director is there to say, hey, I'm reading, the leader's going to go here, and he'll call the bridge. Oh, we're going to do the bridge again. We're going to do the bridge again,
Hmm.
and he learns to read them.
Yeah.
But I think the local team see that and think they need an MD, but that's not all an MD should be, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So, and I know
That's a great point.
churches struggle with people willing to do that level of commitment. But ultimately, I think that's if I have anything to do, I will encourage people. You got to find your guy or girl,
Yeah.
whatever.
I would love to hear, assuming people are watching, maybe they will, maybe they won't.
Yeah,
I would love to hear people or see people put in the comments. If you could add this in, if you're watching this, if you're a worship leader, or even if you're a musician playing at your church, I would love to see the congregation size and if you have a music director or not,
yeah,
because a lot of smaller to medium sized churches do not. The worship leader plans the services, sometimes plans the whole service, and
yeah,
then also does all the arranging and does all the music. It's kind of built in.
yeah.
Some of the larger venues might have a music director. So a lot of people, I would guess, are doing this all their own.
Hmm.
So, and if you're not adept at music, then the Sunday becomes about the music because you're just trying to hang on. You're trying
Right,
to keep the train from going off the track. Like you're just
right.
trying to avoid train wrecks. So if you don't have a music director, Clint, we talked about this before. If you don't have an MD, you should plan out your arrangements to the letter. Don't plan on, hey, for players who play once a week, I might throw an extra chorus in. I might throw an
Mm,
extra bridge in. Be ready.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
how train wrecks happen. I'm telling you, I was at a very large church and we had stuff locked. And this is what we're doing. And then I would say, on this song today, I'm going to do
right,
an extra chorus.
right.
Sometimes the song would end and everybody's done. And on
Yeah,
my own, I would
yeah,
play another one. But
right.
now that you might say it takes away spontaneity, and that to a degree that's good. Does your pastor have his sermon planned?
Yeah,
Probably. He's probably not
yeah,
winging most of it. So if you
right.
don't have an MD, a music director, my advice to you would be to have it locked in and pretty
Hmm.
well set until you get some momentum, especially if you got 2 or 3 pieces or something. It's really easy to go off the rails if there's 3 of you endings and stuff. So I would love to hear how many have. I never had a music director, but Clint knows I can arrange and stuff.
Yeah,
So I was
yeah,
always the
yeah. You
MD.
didn't really need one, but
I
there are a
mean,
lot, like you just spoke to. There are a lot of leaders out there that they are a leader, but they may not be musically inclined enough to
tough.
arrange and put together
Yeah,
and even to know when something's wrong.
that's
The band
right.
might be doing it completely wrong, but if you're not an actual
Hmm.
musician,
Yep.
it just you miss it, you
Yep.
know. Um,
Yep.
but I agree. I would like to know your other people's reaction, and they may completely disagree with us, and that's okay. But uh, all we've got to go, and I would say to anybody out there who's listening, any any leader who served 15, 20, 30 years, you're going to have an opinion of what worked well for you during that span of time, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So any leader who's led for 30 years could do a podcast like this. It's
Hmm?
not that we're saying we're right. We're
No,
saying
we
we've
just
done
have
it
cameras
enough.
and mics.
Yeah, we just have cameras and mics. It's just we've done it enough that over a period of time you kind of learn, oh, I made that mistake. And you can look at a team, right? At any
Yeah,
given team, you can look at a team and it's hard not to go, you know, don't do that.
right,
You're,
right,
I could save you a year and a half of headache
for sure.
if you
And
would just kind of,
embarrassment.
yeah, and possibly embarrassment and possibly, you know, well, we won't go there. A lot of other headaches. You can save them a lot of headaches. Let's put it that way.
For sure.
But it's important. I think there's, if people, my goal is if I say something that resonates with somebody and makes their life easier as a leader or a band player, band member, great. I feel like we've accomplished something.
Yeah, for
That's
sure.
really what we're trying to do.
For sure. And we hope we can do that. Hey, you mentioned something interesting there. We talked about improv, right? And
Hmm.
it's kind of improv when the MD might say, back to the bridge, or we're going to do another chorus. We're going to do another chorus. M- we'll talk about repetition on another, and I have strong opinions on repetition. I think it's
Yeah.
good, actually. But one thing about being spontaneous, I heard Tom Jackson, who was he's kind of in Nashville. He was a band. He would come and consult worship teams and help
Hmm.
them to build their band, and it basically kind of guided them in arrangements so it was sounding more professional, to give them a leg up and avoid what I used to call wall of worship, which is when the song comes on, everybody plays full on, and then when the
Yeah,
song
yeah, yeah.
stops, everybody stops. He helps to build moments. But one thing he said about spontaneity, which I think is really valuable, he's like, if you do something spontaneous in the moment, and it just clicks, like, oh, that reson people kind of responded to that. It
Hmm.
resonated in a certain way that if it really works, when you do that song again, would you maybe do that same way? Like, probably. So, spontaneity is good, but when you find something that really resonates with your church, an arrangement that works, or you don't have to do the chorus 8 times like
Right,
Hillsong might. You could do it twice or 3 times and then come back to the bridge and then do the chorus again,
right,
and then all the music goes away and the church sings back to you. When you find those moments that work, lean into those and don't think you have to be spontaneous because you're supposed to be.
right.
When you find an arrangement that really locks in for whatever reason, do
Hmm.
that again. And then sometimes they run their course and it doesn't
Right,
resonate anymore, but be aware of that. You don't have to be spontaneous to be spontaneous, and you don't have to be copying to be copying. You need to do what's right for your congregation, for your team, and lead with humility. Oh, that's good. Yeah.
yeah. That's.
Uh, yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say and I know you have too. We've we've had those moments in songs where spontaneity led to an arrangement
Yeah.
after the fact because we couldn't have planned it. There's no way we could have planned the way that a couple of these songs worked out. Oh, a side note, I'm pretty sure that we had the first 8-minute worship song back in 2000.
Really?
It was one of those songs. You heard "I Will Worship," that song that me and Jason wrote. We
Mhm.
did that, and it was one of those things Jason led into, and it was just the combination of God leading, Jason leading, the band following, and it ebbed and flowed, and it turned into just this great arrangement of the song. Um, and we found that even though we took that and said, okay, that worked really well, let's try it again. Sometimes it didn't. Sometimes literally it felt like we're beating a dead horse. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I think it's yeah, is exactly. So as important as it is to, I think, yes, definitely let spontaneity create arrangements. Be aware of the moment. because it may not work in every service or every performance of that. And we learned that kind of the hard way after, beating a horse for 8
All
minutes.
right,
We
speak to
go,
this. This is good. So you give me your thoughts on this. How do you know? Like in the moment, how can you tell that it's like how can you tell? Or is it do you think, "Oh, it's
well,
just I'm not feeling it?" What do you look for?
uh,
How do you know?
well, it's definitely not watch the faces of the people because they'll lie to you. They will lie to you every time.
Yeah.
They're sitting there, but it could very well be doing something, taking them someplace. I think, I don't know if, I don't think I ever come up with a definitive. I think it was more just, God, I'm going to try to be in the moment. And if I'm doing my best to be in the moment, I'm hoping you're going to lead me through the moment,
Yeah.
and be open, you know, and even praying through those moments mid song, saying, God, I want to, God, take us where we need to go today, but not for the sake of whatever, and if, and at the end of the day, really, I think it just comes down to, call it a gut feeling. You just try to be in that moment and pay attention to what the Spirit's doing. And I completely believe that if you're asking God to direct you in those moments, He will. So you just feel that in your spirit, this is good or this isn't so good. It's time to shut it down.
Yeah. And there's an element of walking by faith.
Yeah,
You said don't trust what you see. That's very valid.
right.
Sometimes you gotta listen to what God's telling you, and that leads to the point of coming into this with an attitude. Our team used to start at. We had an early service at one church. We'd start at 7,
Oh my
and
gosh.
you've had early stuff like that too.
Yeah,
And what was difficult to remember is that when you get to church, well, by the time you get to church, the service would start at 8:30. By the time you get to 8:30, we rehearsed for a half an hour, 45 minutes
right.
before. So
Right.
we've already had our time. We've
Right.
already had a
Loosened
lot of
up.
good time together. We've already had a lot of singing and prayer time. And then the church comes in there, maybe late. They've been, arguing with their kids. They just got a horrible a diagnosis, a cancer diagnosis. Someone has
Mm,
died. Their dad won't talk to them anymore. Husband's an alcoholic who's hiding it. And they've come into the service and you've had 45 minutes to get ready
yeah,
and they're just coming in. So if you only
yeah,
go by the visual, you can be resentful. Like, why
exactly.
aren't they, don't they know what we're here for?
Right,
So I would add to that as a leader, as a team member, never, ever, ever never ever guilt your congregation.
right.
Come on, people. What's
Yeah,
wrong with you? Why
yeah,
don't you focus? What's wrong with you?
yeah,
When as a team, you've probably had a half an hour, 45 minutes to get ready.
right.
When you came in at 7, that's what they're so
That's, yeah, just think
adding
back when you were pouring your coffee
that's
at
right,
6:30 in the morning, or
how
whatever.
you felt.
Right.
And
Or
it's different for everybody's different. Like you said, if you look some people's expressions, they don't tell you what's going on. So I think walking by faith and trusting what God is doing in that moment is really important. And you're gonna make mistakes. Songs are gonna go too short. They're gonna
right.
go too long, and that's okay.
Uh,
But I do think that's valid to not. Some
It
people
is.
you can look at. Oh, I know if Tommy in the eighth row, he's dialed in.
Yeah.
If he's in, we're
Yeah,
in. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
sometimes,
Right.
but
But
that's
like
not
you
always the case
said,
too.
what you mentioned, I mean, it's a great point. You got people coming in every Sunday morning and they're just beat up. They're just they're 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 in need of a moment where they can rest and reflect on God's love and God's peace, and possibly even looking for restoration or looking for, like you said, my dad's not talking to me. I don't that guy is not going to be in the mood to raise his hands, right? He's going to be sitting there
Especially
kind of
not at the
inwardly
beginning.
yeah, especially
Not at
not
the
at 8 o'clock in the morning.
right.
And there's nothing that says you you have to raise your hands to worship. I think
No.
I think Worship is, I mean, this can get very convoluted, and it can be a 2-hour conversation when you try to define what worship is. But I think at the
Hey,
end of
we'll
the
do
day,
that. We'll do
we'll,
that.
we'll do that. What is worship? But I really believe that take away everything else. As leaders, our job is really one thing, and that's to lead people into the presence of God and kind of encourage them to rest and open up to what maybe God has for them that day. It's really, as much as our job is to support the as a band is to support the worship leader, the whole team's job is to support and set up the pastor. What is the pastor doing? Now, we've done this in the past. I've never been a really big, hey, pastor, give me your sermons and I'm going to plan to fit what your message is doing. Did that for a while. And then I decided, you know what? God's big enough that if he's talking to the pastor, he's going to talk to me if I'm praying about over what to do. And I found that it actually started working out better when I didn't try to plan
Yeah.
for what the teaching was.
Right.
Let God do that because His Spirit can move and impact people with pretty much anything you do. When He wants to move, He'll move. You
Yeah.
can't hardly get in the way of that.
Right.
But I completely agree.
That's a good tip. I'm going to add one thing to that because I think it's a good tip, and I'm sure you do this. There was a time where we would try to plan it all, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you just tee it up before he
Yeah,
steps in there,
yeah,
that's all.
that's
And
really
if your worship is, if your music is Christocentric, if it's focused on Christ,
right.
it's gonna there is the common thread. Jesus is the common thread through all of it.
Right.
And then when you crescendo up to that moment before he steps onto the stage or to the
Mm-hmm.
pulpit or whatever your church has, if you crescendo in with something that leads to that, that's all. So even if it's just one song, or even if it's a chorus or something that
Yeah,
drives into that, you don't need the whole thing. And some people
yeah,
do, and that's really great. But you don't. You're right. I don't think I think that happens less now. But putting the whole thing, connecting the dots, is
yeah. It's
incredibly time consuming, is and very, very hard. And you end up doing songs that aren't good songs
right,
because you're like, oh, I
right.
got to fit it in, so that one fits and that one
Yeah,
fits, and
or maybe you don't do them well.
yeah,
Might be a
we
good
used
song, but you just can't
for
pull it off.
sure. We used to rely on cohesiveness within the set. We would
Yeah,
look for songs that worked well together, and then at the end, we would try to kind of lean in. It didn't have to be like he's talking about, Second Timothy. We gotta sing on Second Timothy.
yeah, yeah. We do.
It didn't have to be that close. It can so free yourself. If you're in a
Yeah,
church, you're trying to put it all together.
yeah.
Put your music. Make sure it's Christ focused,
Hmm.
and then make sure it works together with your church, your band, the music, and then maybe at the end
Yeah.
lead into the sermon. But if
I,
not, you don't even have to do that.
well,
Pastors are real good at going, hey, that last line fits right here. My son was talking about this. Now we're into the sermon.
yeah.
They do it all the time.
That you brought
Take
up
the
a great
pressure off.
point. You brought up a great point, and we could probably do this for days.
Let's do it.
Just talk, but
I'm free. Yeah, good.
there's what I found ended up working better for me when I planned was to stop trying to, like you said, connect the dots. To stop trying to talk about, well, if he's talking about whatever, if he's talking about repentance today, I'm gonna go find
Tithing.
songs that talk. Yeah, yeah,
We're gonna
yeah.
sing
Because
all the
everybody
tithing
loves that.
songs.
Yeah, or whatever.
Everybody give the
Stop
tithe.
trying to plan topical and start planning moments because
Yeah.
like it or not, and I'll get probably some pushback on this, but like it or not, at its core, what worship music does, what every music does, is it manipulates emotions. And I
Yeah.
don't use that word as not trying to say we're manipulating people, but
Yeah.
that's what music
Yeah. It
does.
makes you feel a certain way.
Exactly. So I started thinking through, okay, where do I want people to go? And there are services where you kind of want to keep them somber and kind of in that emotional, I call it a down state or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I ended up working. There's some key moments that I tried to plan for, and one was number one, right off the bat, in my opinion, you got to lift them up. You got to get them. You got to get their juices going a little bit. So we would always start with, typically start with some big upbeat song, and when I say upbeat, I mean something past 110 BPM, you know, something that just gets them going. They're
Yeah.
clapping, they're excited.
Beats per
It's,
minute for our
it's
brothers and
exactly,
sisters too. Yeah.
yeah, sorry,
You're not
110
in the
beats per
if
minute.
you're in the Worship Music Academy, you know BPM.
You know what
We've been
that
talking
is.
about it. If not, though, BPM, beats per minute. So
Beats per minute.
we're getting in the one, yeah, faster song.
You just gotta, you just gotta, I kind of called it the happy mode. You got to kind of get
Yeah.
them up and get them happy to be there and enjoy it. Because like it or not, and again, I never tried to put on a show or a concert, but like it or not, that's what they're going to relate it to. They're going to relate it to the emotional experience of going to a concert. And I would always try to put in that kind of that mid-level, acknowledging God for who He is and what He's done, and then move to kind of a reflection moment, which is typically your more somber moment. And that moment almost always relies on the leader talking them through, you know, okay, God is good. God loves us. God did this for us. Now, what are we going to do for Him as a response? Kind of that
Yeah.
reflective response
Yeah.
moment. And to be real honest, I found that we would do that, and we would always kind of end on more of that down moment, because you can always kind of end on, invitation is heavy. I don't. Some churches do invitation, some don't. We did kind of off and on. It was up to the pastor if he decided he needed that. He always gave an opportunity, but it wasn't always a, you know, close your eyes, raise your hand, or come down front, or whatever it is. But I started feeling bad that I was sending all these people home depressed. Because when you sit in that heavy moment for so long,
Yeah.
and then you walk out of there, and I would go talk to people, and they were just like after the service, like
Yeah.
almost depressed. I mean, it felt heavy. So I started going, I don't want to do that to people. So we would come back around when the pastor was done, invitation was done, whatever, band would get back up. And a lot of people will still do songs, but they'll stay in that reflective mode.
Put up. Yeah.
I think it's important to amp it back up. Maybe you come back around to the a couple of choruses and a bridge or whatever of your first song. It doesn't have to
Yeah.
be a full song. It doesn't have, just needs to be something to raise them back up and encourage them. For lack of a better word, put them in a better mood, because they just set through possibly 90 minutes of the Holy Spirit beating on them, and they're going to feel heavy. So let's try to bring them back up and send them home.
Yep. I think
And
that's very good. I think you're hitting on a big idea, a big picture idea. And you weaved it through there. And we haven't said this yet, but I think it's very important. Music is not worship.
right, exactly.
Music is not worship. Music
Hey,
can
hang on, hang on,
facilitate.
hang
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
Say that one more time.
Music is not worship.
Thank you.
Music can facilitate a
Preach it, brother.
response. Music can facilitate a response. It can make you feel a certain way. And when you hear the truth, your response is worship. It's what you do as a result of that. So music can be a catalyst to
Hmm.
cause you to worship. Your children can be a catalyst to cause you to worship. That
Absolutely.
the accident on the freeway, the car that won't start, the snowstorm, the money that you give at the beginning, at the end of the
Hmm.
service, the homeless man that you help get a cheeseburger, the podcast that you do, the time that you play the piano at home, the guitar, cooking dinner for your kids, driving your kids to soccer, those are acts of worship. They can be acts of worship if you're giving those as a sacrifice to the Lord. Everything you do can be an act of worship. And so
Absolutely.
music is a part of that. So people say worship leader. My thought on the worship leader is they're facilitating a setting. People can respond in worship, and music is a powerful emotive thing.
Hmm.
It does make you feel a certain way. Our goal, Clint and I, we believe this. Our goal is to facilitate people to worship, not rock, not enjoy, but the music is there to bring about an emotion so that when you hear the truth, your response is, you are a faithful God. I will serve you faith. Those are the things that we want to facilitate. Maybe we should have said that at the beginning. But
That we
music
maybe
music is a part can facilitate that just like the preaching can. And oddly enough, in scripture, so many times worship is connected to sacrifice more than music. So in some ways, the offering is the greatest moment of worship
right.
in a church because it's the thing that demonstrates that we give worth to God in that moment, sometimes greater than others. So
Absolutely.
all the stuff you're saying there, totally with you. And these are facilitating these moments, these emotional
Right.
moments to allow people to respond
Yeah.
to the truth in worship. So
It really is
100%.
a tool. I mean, and that to be used
Yeah.
to create those moments and put people in a position where they're open and ready to engage
Yes.
God.
Yes.
Because our job, I said it a while ago, but if we can bring people into the presence of God and they're able to recognize God in that moment and open themselves up to what the pastor's getting ready to say, what the open, excuse me, open themselves up to the truth,
Yeah.
and then let the Holy Spirit. And I'll say it. You'll hear me say it probably 1,000 times. We as people and leaders, you just have to give in to let the Holy Spirit do what only the Holy Spirit can do anyway.
Mhm.
Stop trying to uh, you can build moments and you can plan and you can do all these things, but don't ever get in the habit of trying to induce worship in a sense that I'm going to take them to this place and then we're going to have 100 people saved today. That'll never happen. But when you get focused too much on trying that idea of I have to create this moment because that's the only way they're going to engage God, you'll just go off the rails, and it'll do nobody any good.
That's right.
So it's a balance, right?
Honest, yeah, for sure.
So
Being
it's
honest in what you do, can break we're trying to help break down barriers. God can bust through for sure, and it's not that God needs us, he allows us to be a part
right,
of the process.
right,
If he's gonna reach somebody, he's gonna reach them. He allows us to participate in the act of bringing people in,
right.
and music is one of the ways we do that. So,
Yeah,
for
yeah,
sure.
completely agree.
Yeah.
And just another quick. I don't know how long we want this to go today.
I was thinking
But
4 hours, maybe
4
5.
hours, 5, it's good enough.
No,
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. We'll go
Um,
till we can
yeah.
stop in
Well,
just a little
I was
bit.
just going to say one other aspect of worship music, I think, is that that would be good for people to kind of grab hold of is this idea of a worship song isn't what you hear on the track. That's not what makes the song good. When you can lead worship, and me and my brother said this for years and years. We can leave all you need to lead worship is a singer and acoustic guitar or a piano. Or it doesn't have to be the big band. It doesn't have to be whatever.
Oh,
You don't even need power. And we've done that. We've had power go out on Sunday morning before
me too.
and stood down there with an acoustic, no, not mic'd worship in itself a moment. So don't get hung up on the production. Yeah, do it well. Do play to your talents. Play to the people that you have in your band.
Right.
But if it's not that, it doesn't matter. Make it whatever you need it to be. That fits. And honestly, some of those smaller moments were some of our best moments.
A
you know.
and you know why? I have an idea why. When you do things that are produced well,
Mhm.
when they're really, really high quality, if the person standing up front doesn't exude honesty, sincerity, it begins to feel like a production for the
Sure.
sake of a production.
Right.
When that person is honest and sincere and genuine and real and humble, you could put anyone behind them doing the best stuff and it feels connected
Feels honest.
because it's honest. Well, I mean, we had a moment in Nashville. Uh, they were trying to find worship leaders, and Mark Lowry was one of the members of our church. Remember Mark
Mm.
Lowry?
Yeah.
So he for this Sunday, he came up and led hymns, and he didn't have a piano player. He just got up there and started singing, and he just
That's
sang
cool.
hymns, and we just sang, no music.
Yeah.
I'll never forget it. It was so powerful. It was
Yeah.
fantastic. He did like 3 traditional hymns, and then because there was no music in that moment, you could hear, I mean, or Nashville, you could hear people breaking into harmonies around
Oh,
the
yeah, yeah.
church, and then
That's cool.
he had his mic, and he would just back off, and it was so powerful, and we had that similar thing happen at one church in Wisconsin where power went off. We lost the soundboard, it crashed. Soundboard crashed, and so everything went dead. So in the ears, like, everything's gone, and then we realized what's happening. So we just turned to the piano player. We got a big old grand piano acoustic. "Play us Trisha, play us something." And we just I said, "Somebody shout out a hymn." And they yelled out, and I go, "Trisha, you got it? Let's go." And we sat there, and we sang for 15
Yeah.
minutes. It was so good because
Yeah.
it just felt because boom, something happened like, but don't panic.
Yeah.
Don't panic. Remember, you are not the performer. They are not the audience. You are there together. Take it in,
Yep.
enjoy the moment, like, "Oh, this is
Yeah.
cool," and just pivot and make it honest. And when you make a mistake, this is a good example for making a mistake too. If you make a
Oh, yeah.
mistake, if it's a big one, if
Don't
it's a
try to cover.
fly, that's the rule. If it's a fly that only you see, move
Yeah.
on. If it's
Yeah.
an elephant that everybody sees, you
Yeah.
gotta acknowledge the elephant. You
Yep.
can't just pretend like there's
Yeah.
that's the worst when something is so obvious and they just try to keep going. No, just
Yeah.
stop and go, "Okay, everybody, we all see that, right? You all
Right,
hear
right.
that? I
Yeah.
hear it too.
That wasn't planned. That's not
Let's
supposed to
just"
be there.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
anyway, those are good things. When that stuff
Yeah.
happens, but be
That's
honest. That's the most important. Be
It does.
sincere.
And in those moments as a leader, if you can, because they're all feeling the angst anyway,
For
right?
sure. They're more
They
worried
know
about
it's there.
you.
They're worried. They're
They're
going,
scared you're gonna,
oh,
"Oh, poor guy."
they're feeling bad for you. They're like, oh, what's going to happen? If you just stop and
Mhm.
say, well,
That was good.
that was great. Let's
You
try
know
this again.
what I said
And
one time? One time something went totally wrong, and there were like, there were probably 600 people out there. I was like, "Man, I am so glad this room wasn't full of people. I'm glad this wasn't
Oh, that's
real." They all
funny.
started laughing. I was like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
but you're
Yeah,
right."
but just and you know what? That's becoming pretty common nowadays since the infusion of tracks. I go to a
Yeah, you
lot.
get
I go to a
off.
lot of churches. They'll either get off, or the guy clicks the
Then
button and it doesn't start. So
yep,
there's this awkward silence. Technology goes haywire
for
sometimes.
sure. Yeah.
You got to call those moments out, bring some levity to the situation, and everybody will go, oh yeah. They're not going to go home and say, oh, they really messed up
What's
today.
wrong with these people?
Yeah, yeah. It's they're going to acknowledge it. You're going to be able to reset and
Try not
move
to,
on.
if you can, try not to pull an Ashley Simpson.
the,
You're
the dance.
If you remember that from Saturday Night Live?
Yeah, yeah.
They started the wrong song. Well, no, they did,
Mhm.
but just
Yeah,
acknowledge it, and
yeah.
I feel
Acknowledge it,
bad for
move on.
Ashley. I mean, I saw Celine do a lip sync one time. If Celine can lip sync, can't
Yeah,
everybody? Yeah. Oh, well.
she had a good reason though.
Celine
Yeah,
did? Oh, well, that's a whole different
um,
podcast. The Celine
I know
cast.
the Celine cast.
I like Celine Dion. But,
I'm a
yeah.
closet Celine fan.
Are you?
Oh man,
Because
she's
You
one of
Love
the, one
Me?
of the best.
What's your favorite Celine song?
I don't want to say.
It's Titanic, isn't it?
I'm a rock
It's Tit
guitar. I'm a rock guitar player. I can't say my favorite
Clint's
Celine
like,
song.
"Oh, because you love."
No,
Yeah.
no, no, no. What's the one?
Heart Will Go On.
No, yeah. Shoot, I can't think of the name of it now.
I saw her on an award show do All by Myself, and I was like,
Oh, that was
"That's
amazing,
unbelievable."
unbelievable.
Yep,
But yeah, anyway, yeah, I
Celine.
I like Celine. That's so good.
All right, what else? We're gonna wrap it down. Anything you want to say before we'll shut it
Um,
down for today?
no, only I would love if people hear this. I would love to hear feedback. What did you agree with? What you not agree
Nice,
with?
kind.
Nice, be kind, or we'll yank it because I'm not in. I'm
Hey,
not
yeah, yeah, yeah.
getting in
We
that world.
we try to approach everything in love and
Yeah,
kindness. So yeah,
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 and I mean opinions.
yeah. Sure.
Maybe there's an opinion on something we talked about that we didn't think about, or
Yeah, right.
some other comments.
For
I
sure.
just love to hear how people are doing and questions. If people have, hey, I'm in this situation. I've been leading for 2 years and I've got these challenges. How would you approach these? I would
Yeah,
love to, help
yeah. Guide us
counsel. If people were open for it, if they're looking for maybe a new approach on something, love to help walk them through those situations.
for sure. For sure.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
because that's what we're doing this for. We were just talking about worship music. Thought, why don't we do a podcast and talk about all this stuff? And maybe somebody could benefit from this. So
right,
we want to approach all this with humility and love,
exactly.
honesty, and understanding that we don't have all of the answers. We have some. I think we have
Yeah,
some
I think we
answers,
have some.
and hopefully we can help you and encourage you, challenge you, get you thinking. And yeah, for sure, leave a comment down there and let us know what you think. Jump over to the website there, worshipmusicacademy.com. You can see what we've got there, and we'll post some more stuff here based on your comments. We'll put a lot more things. All right, awesome,
Yeah,
Clint. Thanks, man. This has been
awesome. Thank you,
so
Jared.
fun.
It's been awesome.
We're gonna do
We'll
it
do it
again.
again.
All right, all right.
Perfect.
God bless you
See
guys.
you,
See you
bud.
see you soon.
See you.